Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll go you, mate.
Okay.
You're a professional now, son.
All right. Ready? Let's go. Welcome to Football Fever. Another big night tonight. We're here joined again by Andy O. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, Chubb. Sorry, mate. Just having a bit of a sip of water, mate. It's a long show with no breaks.
Now, I've
So
got
we
a
need
massive show
to.
tonight. We're going to be speaking very shortly with Stealth Tony Rallis. We're going to get Carl Veart. We know the big news broke out with Carl Veart this week about him being departing Adelaide United in sad circumstances. We'll be moving on as well at the end of the season. We'll also be catching up with league leaders at the moment in the NPL and championship winning coach of last season in the New South Wales Premier League, Peter Tsakenas. And then to top it all off, we're going to have that romantic story that we were all captured with last week in the FFA Cup with Arncliffe Aurora, those scenes down there when they beat the Mount Druitt Rangers. It was the biggest upset ever in the Australian Cup. We're going to be speaking to Hassan Reader, who've also drawn Sydney Olympic in the next round, which is going to be a huge game. So we've got a full jam-packed show tonight, Andy.
Yeah, massive Chubbs. A lot going on locally. There's a lot overseas as well as we will hopefully get to. We didn't really get to it last year with the Jam Pack show, but yeah, we'll try to get to a bit of overseas action later on, including massive Champions League games, as you know, that happened last week. A lot going on in domestic competitions as well. So should be a good show.
Should be a great show. Firstly, I just want to take the opportunity to thank everyone that's really jumped on with Chubba TV. We've only been launched 3 weeks. We've got over 6,500 subscribers. We've had over 120, 150,000 views with it, Football Fever, and all the videos we put up. So I want to thank everyone for their support, and they can keep supporting us. All you got to do is like and press the subscribe button, so you always be notified when Football Fever stories break and videos are out there, and you can follow the show every Monday night. So the support has been enormous, Andy.
Yeah, mate. Look, I've got to give congratulations to yourself, son. You're working hard behind the scenes. I know we speak quite a bit about what you're doing off the field, so to speak, with the show, mate, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And stories like you said about Arncliffe Aurora are massive. A lot of people do engage when you talk about grassroots football or football at that level, mate. So well done. I've got to congratulate you on what you're doing, mate. Hopefully, bigger and better, and yeah, we get more people jumping on.
Andy, do you want to just quickly run through all the A-League results and the women's games results quickly before Stealth Tony Rallis joins us, and then we'll go over as well to Carl Vid in our first interview for the night.
Yeah, I'll get to the A-League results, mate. There was, I know we all know a big game yesterday with my team and your team, Western Sydney Wanderers, beating Western United 2-0. That was a massive result. That's promoted Western Sydney into the top four at this stage, only 2 points behind Western United. But other results over the weekend were Perth Glory 4. That was a massive result too on Saturday, beating Adelaide 1. Newcastle Jets absolutely steamrolled Central Coast Mariners 6-0 in that F3 M1 derby, what they call it now. Sydney FC in Auckland scored played a 2-2, very, very entertaining 2-2 draw again on Saturday. The other Saturday game was Melbourne Victory getting the points over Wellington Phoenix 3-2 over there in Wellington. And the game started on Friday night, as we know, Melbourne City beating Brisbane Roar 3-2 in another entertaining game. So goals galore, Chubbs. There was the only result that was less than 2 goals was yesterday's game, which was Wanderers and Western United. But the ladder at this stage looks like this. Auckland still on top on 47 points. Melbourne City second, 43. Western United 41. As I mentioned, Western Sydney Wanderers have now jumped into fourth spot, only 2 points behind Western United after that win yesterday. They're on 39, as well as Melbourne Victory on 39, and Sydney FC round out the top six with their result over the weekend. Still 1 point ahead on Adelaide, who stumbled to a defeat, and they're 1 point behind Sydney FC, obviously with still a chance to make that top six.
Stealth Rallis, Tony Rallis, one of the best football agents, if not the best. We believe the best anyway, doing always helping the community in the country. Good evening to Football Fever for another big show tonight.
Good evening, fella.
Welcome, Stealth. I'll quickly just run through a couple of the W League games. As we know, that was back in action over the weekend. Friday night, there was a 2 games, Central Coast 0, Melbourne Victory 1, Melbourne City 4, Newcastle Jets Women 1. On Saturday, we had 2 games, Western United 1, Adelaide Women 3, Sydney 1, Perth Glory 0. And yesterday, there was 2 games to round out the season. A highly, highly entertaining and very controversial game, Chubbs. 4-4 draw between Brisbane Roar and Western Sydney Wanderers. There was 2 red cards right at the end of the first half. Very, very controversial red card, especially the one for the Wanderers goalkeeper. And the other game was Canberra 1, beat Wellington Phoenix 0. And just quickly on the ladder as it stands in the A-League Women, Melbourne City on top, 52. Melbourne Victory on 50 in second spot. Adelaide 8 points behind on 42. Western United a further 10 points behind Adelaide on 32. Central Coast and Canberra round out the top 6.
Still, just before we're going to go to Carl Veart today, speak to him. There was a big story we know during the week. Adelaide United deciding not to extend Carl Veart's contract, just a bit like Robbie Stanton and probably 2 of the coaches that have had wonderful success with the youth players in their program. I mean, we look at Eric Kondo as well, one of the youngest players ever to score a hat-trick in the A-League, got sold to Bayern Munich under Carl Veart as well. It was a bit of disappointing news, and it was it's a bit of, for me, it's left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth with these 2 shock not resignations, but getting...
I think we've got to be careful in the language you use, Chubber. I think the reality is that Carl was off contract and not renewed. So it's a little bit less controversial than Robbie Stanton's, who had a 2-year contract signed 14 weeks ago. In both the cases, it's astonishing lack of knowledge by the decision makers. I think the Newcastle one is more detrimental because they really don't know. I think in Adelaide's case, Carl's been there for 5 years and they probably think that they need a new voice. I disagree with that. I think Carl's done a sensational job. He took over the club during COVID. He's never complained about finances and he's at the bottom scale of it. And as you said quite early, I mean, the amount of revenue generated with the sale of Joe Gauchi at Aston Villa and their young goalkeeper to Brighton Albion. We had Ira Kundagan Bain. We've had Stephen Mork being sold. We've had Craig Goodwin being sold. Tremendous SAS for sold. That's all under Carl Veart's stewardship. And I think Adelaide's made a mistake on this. I think a couple of new additions would have fitted the mould. I can say that it's my opinion that, and this is where I find it interesting, that the CEO and the football director of the club, the football manager of the club, Nathan Kosmina and Marius Zanian, are staunch supporters of Carl Veart. So it makes you wonder who made the decision, and it seems like the owner made the decision. And it'll be interesting to see who they sign. I'm not sure they're going to go far, and I'm pretty sure they're going to try and replicate the model by signing or approaching, I would say, Michael Valkanis or Ross Aloisi, both Adelaide boys, and have various success as coaches. So it'll be interesting to see how they go with that. But ultimately, extremely disappointing. Carl's had a lot of those kids since they were 13s, 14s. Prior to him becoming the senior coach of Adelaide United, he was running the South Australian youth development, and obviously doing a great job. So that allowed him to have a clear insight as the type of players he's promoting. And look, there's a couple there now, like young Kikanis. I think Panayotis is going to go somewhere. He's already, I think he'll be their next $700,000 sale. Johnny Yule sort of fallen off the radar, becoming good now. Luka Ivanovic, maybe Archie Goodwin. And that's all Carl Veart and the commitment of the club and their planning. So disappointing, and it's extremely disappointing in my opinion. But hopefully they made the right decision and moving on.
Still, you can see it's our great pleasure to announce an ex-Socceroo legend, in my eyes, one of the best strikers I grew up as a young kid following at Adelaide City, an absolutely legend, one of the best teams probably played in Australian football, that Adelaide City team. Always enjoyed Carl Veart and followed him now closely in his coaching career. He's done a wonderful job, like we just said, with a lot of youngsters and taken Adelaide United to playoff series finals. They're very close, 4 games to go. It's a battle to get in that top 6. Good evening, Carl. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Evening, Carl.
Carl,
Howdy.
thanks for joining us tonight, mate. It's a difficult week for you, I'd imagine. Did it come as a surprise that the renewal wasn't offered to you?
Yeah, it was at the time. But look, the club want to go take that next step in what they've got planned going forward. So, and they believe it's better if I move on. They say I've been there, 5 years, a long time. So, they want to, I suppose, get some new ideas in.
As an outsider looking in and admirer of what you achieved from my position as an agent, I look at that and I've said earlier on the show that I find the decision, it's one of those decisions, in my opinion, in mainstream opinions, that you don't know how good you've got it until you lose something. And I think that they're going to face that, because it'd be fair to say that you're an Adelaide man through and through. You brought through kids. You came in during COVID. The club's never flush with money. There was challenges that the club would even survive. Did they give you an explanation as to why they wanted to go in a different direction, other than you've been there for 5 years?
No, that was it. Look, I have to accept their decision. The club means a lot to me. I've done my best in that 5 years being there, and yeah, look, I disappointed with the decision, but I have to move on.
Well, in the 5 years you've been there, you've made 3 of the 4 years you've made the semi-finals. What are some of your proudest moments and highest achievements from your personal perspective?
Yeah, look, I'd have to say, giving those opportunities to the young players, I look back on my career. I was afforded the same luxury at Adelaide City to be given that opportunity to come into, one of the best sides in Australian football at the time in Adelaide City, and allowed to develop, under some great leadership in Zoran Matic and some of the senior players there, and then to go on and play for the Socceroos. That was, an unbelievable ride that I had, and in my time, being outside of the club, it just frustrated me, because I was working in that youth development and developing young players that I believed could do something if given an opportunity. And, at the time, Adelaide weren't interested in providing that pathway for the young Adelaide boys. And, I got that opportunity to step into Adelaide United, and I made sure I opened that door for the younger players. And to see so many young players come through and, go on overseas and go play for the, young Socceroos, the Joeys, and, even go on and play for the Socceroos. That's my greatest pride in seeing those young players play for the national team.
Carl, how many transfers did you ever see during your 5-year term there in Europe? Did you have a...
Yeah, look, I can give you a rough number. We've most probably generated close to $10 million since I've been there, with, a lot more of that still to come, depending on how well some of those players do in their time overseas. Look, it's, I suppose we've been fortunate that we sort of got in early and played those young players, virtually from my first season in charge, which has given us that opportunity to get in front of a lot of the, the other A-League clubs in that regard. And, we've got, 4 or 5 good players now that are in our squad that could also most really make a move, maybe if not this season, next season.
If you had your time again, would you change anything?
Look, it's... I'd like to change that we'd won one of those semi-finals and got to a grand final. But at the time, we didn't have the budget really to compete and go get some some more quality players that we needed to bring into the side to give us that opportunity, and the budgets that we had, to go bring other players in from A-League clubs on, that around, somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. I just didn't see the point in that. So we stuck with the younger players. And, I've got to take my hat off to the club. They got behind that decision making for me. And, sort of, I suppose in a way they were, happy for me to do that.
Before I pass you on to the who's going to be Adelaide's next big sale from the crew that you've got now?
Yeah, look, there's some of the boys that are playing in the first team at the moment. I think Archie Goodwin, if he has another strong season in the A-League, I think he needs most really one more season in the A-League to make sure that he's got his body in the best condition it has. I'd say he's got huge potential. He's just an out-and-out goal scorer. You don't see too many people, number nines, with the instinct that he's got. A lot of his goals are scored. People will say they're scored inside the 6-yard box, but that's an instinct thing that you can't really coach. Then you've got young Panner and Johnny. They're two exciting young players as well. And then most really the next young one coming through, young Amlani. They're the sort of the big ones that I think will go for some good money.
Carl, just looking forward to this playoff series. I know you want to finish on a good note. I mean, you're just 1 point outside of the top 6 there, Sydney FC on 34, you're 33. 2 huge games for me coming up in Wellington and Brisbane. Is that where these 2 games are going to be really key to try and get into that top 6?
Yeah, most definitely. It should have been, one on the weekend as well for us. We were very poor against Perth on Saturday night. And unless we, have that change of mentality, we're not going to get there. And look, we're good enough when we're on top of our game and we play with intensity and play with energy. We're a very good side. But when that's missing, we struggle. And you have to see, over the last couple of months we haven't played enough football in matches to win those matches. We've had good spells in those games, but just haven't had a focus to get enough points to put us in the finals already. We should already be there. I think we've dropped 20 points from winning positions in the second half of games this season, which is far too many.
How do the players take the news? Because sometimes, could have been a distraction this week. If you look at the result, a lot of people would say that could have been a distraction and it probably didn't help in the result with Perth Glory. You look at Newcastle Jets, they probably did well with Robbie Stanton. So do you think your news would affect the players in any way, or it's just, they're professional and it's just moving forward?
Yeah, I think it would have taken its toll a little bit on some of the players. Some of those players I've had for a long time. I've coached some of those players, since they were 14 years of age. So I think it took a little bit out of some of those players, but I don't know how much of an effect it had on it. We still needed to turn up on Saturday and we didn't. So it's important, we got a tough game against Wellington. They're a very good side in transition, and that's where we've really struggled this year with teams in transition.
Andy?
Yeah, Carl, 2 quick questions for me. Firstly, congratulations on your achievements so far, mate. As Chubba mentioned, that Adelaide City team, mate, it was a joy to watch back in the day. Do you have aspirations to continue coaching, mate, or are you obviously a proud Adelaide man? There's obviously talk about this national second tier that's coming in, and interestingly enough, Adelaide City are, I think they've passed credentials at this stage, not quite in the final 6 or 8 that have been announced thus far. But any aspirations to continue coaching?
Yeah, look, of course, I've been coaching now for a long time, so I still want to coach. I still think I've got a lot of that I can offer, to teams. So look, I'll finish this season hopefully strongly with Adelaide, and then I'll just have to wait and see which doors open for me.
It's interesting as well. Sorry, Tom. I just want to mention the crowds when you watch an A-League game involved in Adelaide, particularly the Adelaide Melbourne games. Is one of my favourites. I look out look for it when the fixtures come around. But the crowds are massive. Do you think? I mean, later on down the track, obviously, the city of Adelaide, and we know it's huge with AFL, with obviously the Crows and Port Adelaide, and they've just hosted that gather round, which was always every year has been a success since that started. But do you think that the city can possibly handle a second or a second derbies?
I don't think so at this time. Adelaide is still, the population of Adelaide is still quite small, and we don't have a lot of sponsorship dollars available in the city. And as you say, we've got two big AFL teams that take a lot of that sponsorship money. So look, I'd see it be quite difficult. You just have to look around the A-League. There's a lot of A-League clubs struggling at the moment. I think we need to make sure we make sure that the A-League stays strong with the sides that we have at the moment. And we've got a lot of work to do to get the A-League back on two strong feet.
Our final question from us is: are you interested in moving into state, or are you a hardened Adelaide guy that won't leave?
Yeah, home? No, look. As I said, I want to be a football coach, and I still want to be a professional football coach. And there's only the one professional job in Adelaide. So look, that door's closed on my career now. So look, I'll have to, put my hat in the ring for maybe some other jobs that might come available, and be prepared to move. Look, that's not an issue. My son might not be too happy, but it's something that we'll have to look at as a family.
Would it be fair to say that you'd probably look at a position that's not dissimilar, like you're more interested in dealing and promoting young kids? And is that going to be easy to do in an environment?
Yeah, look, I suppose it will depend on what position you go into. Look, at the time that was the best ideal situation for Adelaide United at the time. Yes, I still believe in playing young players wherever I move to, but Adelaide, we had to play a lot of young players, and to have success, sometimes you need to get a better balance.
So we wish you all the best. Like I said, as a stakeholder of the game, a bit astonished with that decision. There's plenty of clubs that could use your confidence in young players, belief in Australian talent, and I think the results have been there for everyone to see. Haven't heard too many people say that they were not shocked by this non-re-signing, and we wish you all the very best for the future.
100%. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great credit to you.
Hi, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. And that was Carl Veart. And still, like we said, like you said, it was a bit of a shock for everyone. It definitely was a shock, especially in the A-League world, that they didn't re-sign Carl Veart. But he's a good coach, and I think there you can tell by the move he's ready. He'll be ready and keen to get back into it if an opportunity comes.
There was a shock, and we wish him all the best. We want coaches like that that believe in Australian talent. The opportunity now to make up the television money comes through coaches like Carl Veart and Robbie Stanton, who develop players and give them opportunities. And there's not they get their DNA, they get their towns, they get their youth setups. They understand which players can make it. They themselves being young, successful former Socceroos and the like.
So can I just ask you on the what's the ownership structure like down there in Adelaide? As I said, I mean, every time they're probably one of the most successful teams in terms of attracting and drawing crowds from.
Well, they do it well. They're such a community-orientated city, very much focused on, even the state league clubs, they focus on supporting Adelaide United. There's no division where, in the NPL, in the New South Wales NPL and the Victorian VPL, there's a lot of clubs that would rather see a player's career finished than give them or pass them on to an A-League club. Where Adelaide's done really, really well, it works with the state leagues. They promote players, and they're a proud town. They do get great crowds because they have a boutique stadium, a stadium for themselves, and it's a tremendous atmosphere. The owner is a Dutch owner, and he's quite a wealthy young man. But obviously, like everything, they all took a hit with that $1.5 million contribution reduction. But he had a guy that was promoting players, playing them, fairly successful, and generating. He heard it, $10 million.
You think? Sorry, Chubb. It's a financial a financial decision?
No, I just think that the owner, being of Dutch background, probably felt that the club or the team needed a new voice. And that's fine if you've already identified that voice and you know who it is and that he meets the criteria of what your club's agenda is. And they haven't done that. So how you get rid of someone that's had, kicked a lot of his KPIs, a legend of Australian football, 3 finals out of 4, possibly 4 out of 5. The amount of talent he's produced and sold overseas and just kept going without really complaining.
You don't reckon they've been talking to someone? Surely they've got to be talking to someone behind the scenes, possibly?
Well, I mean, look, I'm surprised with Adelaide because they've got a Dutch PD.
Stealth, I've seen, no one believes the bookies or whatever, but they've got his assistant coach's firm favourite to take the job.
Yeah, look, I mean, I couldn't tell you with any certainty. One thing I've heard is that they're going to go local, and does it count as local? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Stealth, just now, there was a lot of action on the A-League, and we talk about, I think, the A-League, some of the quality of football has been tremendous, and again, a lot of goals, a lot of quality games. There's 3 players I want to bring up after this round, and one player is really making, the headlights lately. Segasic at Sydney FC, Velape at Melbourne Victory, and Taylor at Newcastle Jets. Wow, what performances over the weekend again.
A lot of talented players, and it's come through the pathway, Chubb. If you look at the old NSL, every club had its own identity, only had 2 to 3 foreigners max. They had a reserve cricket. Now that the A-League's doing similar, we're playing more with these kids. There's some tremendous Velapale, like you said, Clayton Taylor. Another one is Nicholas Milanovic, Segasic.
Yeah.
There's players coming through, and let me tell you something. Some of those players will eventually go overseas and represent Australia as well. And if you consider that, and I can't speak for others, but obviously I'm connected to Taylor. If you consider Taylor's been playing injured, and 6 goals, 5 assists in 20 games. Eli Adams is another exciting player to watch that Robbie Stanton produced out of nowhere. So we're starting to produce them. You're starting to see their individualism. I mean, watching the Western Sydney Wanderers, Western United game, high performance game, high intensity, intense stuff.
Great action.
13,000 people at Wonderland. Great atmosphere.
What are your thoughts? Okay, Andy.
Sorry, Chubbs. I was going to say, I'm hearing Milanovic is very, very close to going overseas, possibly even this year.
Milanovic has knocked a few offers back in the past 12 months. He should be overseas. The question for me, for Milanovic and Segasic and players alike is, are they mentally ready to go? There's no doubt that they've got the talent to go.
What sort of league would suit those, or those 2 in particular, because they're the ones that
Look, I'm a bit biased because I think, I'm not one for sending players to leagues or clubs that are beyond their capability of walking in or having a chance of starting. For me, an MLS or Scandinavia, lower mid-range Dutch or Belgian clubs, for me, that's the way to go.
Tone, you're very close to the A-League. Let's get your view. I think Western United the curse last week. I pumped them up, and whenever I pump up a team, the following week they went down to the Wanderers because I really believe that Western United. I still do. I believe they're a danger to Auckland FC. But do you think the top 6 is what we're in there? Can you see Adelaide getting in there, or do you think we've got the top 6 that we have now in Auckland, Melbourne City, Western United, Wanderers, Victory, and Sydney FC? And that excites me. Apart, all right, Western United, and Melbourne City, but the big guns are all there.
It's our league if those 4 high drawing crowds are there.
Correct.
Look, I think if Sydney FC get past Lions City Sailors on Wednesday night and the confidence is up, I believe that they will make the 6. They've got too much quality not to.
You think they can turn that league around, Stealth?
Sorry, what was that?
You think they can turn that league around, losing 2-0 over there? It was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I do. Going to Singapore. See, people are undereducated. Lion City Sailors are a club owned by a billionaire who effectively signs players, pays transfers. Now, that's not relevant to the Singapore League or or the capacity of that, but it is for that club. They've got tremendous facilities. I've got a player there in Bailey Wright who left the championship to go there. And basically, they've got some top foreigners and they've got a top coach. But that synthetic ground, our boys, the Sydney FC boys, I should say, travelling on economy class in airports for 18 hours there and 18 hours back between airport to airport or home to. It takes its toll. I mean, I spoke to a couple of the boys; they're exhausted. The travel's taken a lot, especially some of the Socceroos.
And that was a big result for them against Auckland on the weekend too, turning around.
I honestly believe that Sydney will beat Lion City Subs, and if they do that, a lot of the tiredness and fatigue will go.
Steph, the last question before we're going to go to NPL segment, and after we're going to have. I wanted to bring up with you because during the week we had that fairy tale story of Arncliffe Aurora in the Australian Cup knocking off the NPL Premier League Mount Druitt Rangers 2-1. And when we spoke about the FFA Cup, now known as the Australian Cup, coming in, these were the stories we dreamed of, where an association team can beat an NPL club or an NPL club taking on an A-League. That just again proves how successful this Australian Cup and the format we brought in, hasn't it? It's just, and now you see Arncliffe Aurora during one of the heavyweights back in our time, Sydney Olympic. You know, these are what dreams are made of.
Not only that, it's also engaging in a new community. The Arabic community sometimes is understated. They're more people resonated more with following the Bulldogs of St George Rugby League, but the reality is there's a lot of talented kids of different Arabic backgrounds, and sometimes their pathways are not blocked. We've got a lot of Iraqi and Lebanese boys that play in the A-League, you know, your Andrew Nabboos, your Patrick Yazbeks. Before that, historically, your Michael Redders, your Buddy Farahs, now your Abdul Faisals, your Mo Altay. So there's a lot of boys coming through, Shapoon at Western United. And we need to foster those communities, because let me tell you something, they actually provide a tremendous atmosphere.
Incredible.
And we need to embrace that. We need to understand that, and we need to grow with it. And there's some of the things that I often reflect on clubs that, you know, talk about, oh, we don't have enough financial muscle to promote ourselves or this and that. I think there's a real argument in looking at Asian communities and Arabic communities. And I stress they've got to be able to play, because it defeats the purpose otherwise. But if we engage with these communities, they've got so much to offer.
Definitely. I mean, like you said, the scenes down in Arncliffe, and, you know, I definitely think there'll be over 5,000-7,000 people with the Olympic in the next game. The crowd's going to be enormous. It's at a local community, and, you know, it's just what dreams are made of. And like I said, we're going to speak to Hassan Rita later. But Andy, I know you love those stories, and it was just incredible scenes.
I'm looking forward to that Sydney Olympic time, mate. I'll tell you that much. And I think it's on the 23rd, from memory, 23rd of April. So what a team to draw as well. You know, another passionate fan base. You know,
I'll tell you what, Andy. I think Arncliffe's going to get a bigger crowd. There you go.
Oh, definitely we'll have.
I've been following them on social media, boys. They've been plugging the show. They've been plugging the interview tonight. So it's going to be. They've got almost 4,000 followers on their Instagram.
Well,
social media.
I think when I announced them on Chubba TV, my subscribers were going through the roof coming from down from Arncliffe Aurora. So, like Tony said, they're a big community. They're passionate in whatever sport they do, and, you know, it's just great to see. And football needs these people. We shouldn't be scared of them. We should be embracing them and trying to work with them, because, like Tony said, they can bring, you know, great scenes. And not only that, there's players coming out of their background as well that can really play.
But Chubb, I'm going to leave you with this thought. There's a very distinct possibility. If Iraq qualifies for the World Cup, there could be two players going who have, you know, well, at least one in Malte.
Yep.
The Western Sydney Wanderers, if that were to have occurred, would bank $400,000 in FIFA transfer payment, in FIFA World Cup payments
for making the World Cup.
So there's so many diverse outcomes as a consequence, not to mention the proudness of his history and those communities that have been here.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Just on Iraq, Chubbs and Stealth, they unfortunately hit a massive hurdle last game of qualification against Palestine. It was a shock result, but they were very, very close to getting Croatia. To getting qualified for the World Cup. So now they've got to do it a bit more harder this time around. So we'll see what happens.
I think they've got the talent to do it. I think.
Stealth, once again, pleasure. Your tireless work off the show with me that you give me, and the support you give me and us on the show, always giving us, the best stories. You help us get some of the big names and the most, what people want to hear. Thank you once again, and we'll speak to you. We won't speak to you next week. We know it's a public holiday and all the Premier League teams are playing and all that, so there won't be a show next Monday, but we'll be back the week after that anyway. But Stealth, thank you once again for your input tonight.
Night, Chuck.
Thanks, boys.
Good night, Stealth.
Good night.
Andy, from one league, we're going to go from the A-League to another competition that has been, very exciting this season. Again, the NPL in the Premier League and NPL 1. It's been, high quality games. And speaking, we're going to have Peter Tsakenis, who the championship coach of Marconi. And what a good week to come on, because Marconi is now in first spot after a huge win. It was the big game with Spirit, and they managed to beat them 2-1 and give Pekovic's boys their first loss of the season as well.
Yeah, well, as you can see, mate, I've got my three teams that are actually flying. So Wanderers, Newcastle in the background and on my head, and my other team, Marconi, mate, which are flying. There was a big win.
Well, we're going to speak to Checker because it's a huge job, mate. People don't realise how hard it is not only to win the championship, but it's a harder job than to try and back it up the following year. I know we've only had. I know it's still early in the season. I mean, it's only 10 games. But after 10 games, you sort of get a sense of how teams are going. And for them to be sitting first on the table at this present time of the ladder, it's huge.
Yeah, no. And we mentioned that they lost, potentially their lethal weapon up front, who was James Timmer-Costa.
Correct. Well, again, look, in the NPL, like we said with Michael Pekovic, with Yakubo, the biggest work is what you can do and what players you can bring in away from, like in the transfer market. There's no transfer market, but who you can bring in there. And, credit to Marconi. Obviously, they have got they have got a great club behind them, and they can bring some quality players, but we know just doesn't mean bringing quality players bring you results. So Peter Tsakenis and Peter Papathis and all their coaching staff down there just doing leaps, wonderful things down there. And finally it's clicked in. They won the championship and they're going really well. But we'll speak to him in the next couple of minutes. But let's go through the results. We had Sydney FC 1, Central Coast Youth 0. That was a big game for both clubs who are struggling down the bottom of the ladder there.
Two cards for Central Coast in that game, Chubbs.
Correct, yes. Western Sydney Wanderers as well. Youth had a big win over Manly, who's been doing really well this season as well, 2-0. Like we said, the huge game was Spirit versus Marconi. Marconi beat Spirit 2-1 there. Apia, who scored 10 goals in the FFA Cup during the week, then they sent Mount Druitt packing. It's been a week for Mount Druitt. They're going to want to forget it.
Well, I'll tell you something. You mentioned it before, mate, but you can stop a train because you said 2 weeks ago that Mount Druitt. When they got that result that they're
I'm
flying.
the biggest curse. I hope Checker's going to tell me off now that I've been pumping Marconi and they've been winning. So I'm going all right.
They've just gone terrible in the last 2 weeks.
Well, it's a week to forget. Losing to Arncliffe Aurora, then, I'm sure that, they've got their... It's hard, but Apia's, 5-0. Apia's just scoring goals for fun at the moment. St. George City and Olympic had a 1-1 draw. We had Wollongong Wolves beat Sutherland 4-0. Blacktown City beat St. George 3-2. And in another big game yesterday afternoon was Sydney United 1, Rockdale 3. So just quickly let the table, like I said, after 10 games, Marconi on top on 24 points. Second Spirit on 21. Rockdale third on 18. Blacktown City fourth on 18. Apia fifth on 17. And the top 6 rounds off with Manly United on 15. Just outside there, we got St. George on 14, Olympic on 13, Wollongong on 13, Sydney United 12, Sydney FC Youth 11, Sutherland 11, St. George 8, Western Sydney Wanderers 8, and the bottom 2 teams, we know the 2 spots you don't want to be are currently Mount Druitt on 8 points and Central Coast Youth on 5 points. Just turning quickly to the results of, I'll just bring it up, to my competition where I coach our club, Dulwich Hill. Let's just quickly go through all the results. It was Blacktown Spartans 1, Northern Tigers 3, Bankstown City 2, Mounties 1. My team, Dulwich Hill, we drawed with Canterbury Berries 0-0, Rydalmere 4, Macarthur 1. Uni New South Wales 2, Bulls Academy 0, Bonnyrigg 2, Newcastle Jets 4, SD Raiders 0, Interlines 2, and yesterday afternoon we had Harcoa 3, Hills United 3, and the table there, SD Raiders were on top, but Northern Tigers on goal difference now are on top for that, first past the post to get promoted. They're on 22 points. Second is SD Raiders on 22 points. And if you look down the bottom, where you don't want to be, the two teams at the moment, Harcoa Sydney on 8 points and Macarthur Rams on 5 points. So just before we speak to Peter Tsakenis, Andy, huge win for Marconi away to Spirit FC. Akubo again on the score sheet wasn't enough, and Marconi got in front 2-0. Spirit did come back. I mean, they probably felt they could have had chances to get themselves back in the game, but that's a huge win for Marconi away from home.
It was absolutely, Chubbs, and a massive test it was for David and his Spirit FC team, as we know, who were undefeated going into this game, and that's. I suppose it's sort of benchmark that he would have looked at to see where they're at exactly. Didn't come away with the chocolates this time around, but you've got to give credit to Marconi and what they've achieved so far this season on the back of winning the comp last year. The other game you mentioned yesterday, Chubbs, was that Sydney United Rockdale game, because Rockdale left it quite late. Sydney United actually scored
Rockdale scored 3 goals, and Jurasevsky wasn't on the score sheet either.
Yeah, well, Sydney United scored very early, I think, in the third minute.
Correct.
And then
yep.
the equaliser came halfway through the second, and then
65th,
they scored
89th, and 90th.
Exactly, unbelievable. And the crowd, I actually had a friend out there at the game, just there at Denza Park, and as you know, these two teams always draw a massive crowd. But yeah, that's a big result, obviously for Rockdale. Sydney United would be obviously disappointed to be leading that early and couldn't quite see out the game even with the draw. And to cop 2 late goals is always concerning and a bit frustrating. But look, they're still there or thereabouts. But that would have been a result they would have been hopefully banking on at home. But we know in this competition, Chubbs, as we say all the time, anyone can beat anyone, and Rockdale's obviously a quality outfit.
Well, last year you had Marconi, Rockdale, your Blacktown Cities, your RPA, all there. They're all still there in the top 6 or thereabouts. Like you said, the big surprise this season has been Michael Perkovic's team, Spirit FC. It's going to be interesting to see how Spirit go, because they win the first 9 rounds unbeaten, and now they've had their first loss to Marconi. It's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back, because they don't want to just. They want to get a victory and keep that momentum going. It's going to be interesting to see how they turn up next week, because we have a look.
They've got some this week.
Yeah, so the Spirit, you got Sydney FC taking on Wollongong, Manly taking on Apia, Sutherland taking on St. George City, Mount Druitt taking on Blacktown City, Olympic, huge game, like you said, with Spirit FC. Marconi, well, they're at home. They can consolidate. They'll be looking to consolidate that top spot playing Central Coast Youth. Rockdale playing Western Sydney United Youth, and St. George taking on Sydney United. So again, yeah, like you said, that Spirit game with Olympic looks to be a huge game as well.
And two derbies, you can say, Sutherland and St. George City, and also Mount Druitt and Blacktown, So, let's hope the crowds get out to watch these local NPL games, as we say all the time.
Well, no, it's been it's a great. The great thing with the NPL too, you can watch every game on YouTube. It's been excellent. So if you get on and you can't get to the game, if you watch it on YouTube, the standard's excellent in the NPL. You get some quality, and we see players going through to the A-League and they do really well. So the NPL standard is, like you said, there's some quality games and really real high standard as well.
And the good thing with technology now, Chubbs, is smart TVs. You can just log on to YouTube on the TV and you watch it. It's like you're watching it on, on a normal channel anyway. So the quality of the stream itself for each game is fantastic, and you've got to give credit to Football New South Wales for the way they do that, and obviously all the interstate leagues do the same thing. There's actually a game in the VPL, 2 games actually in the VPL tonight down in Victoria. In NPL in Victoria. Actually, the one game and another one in the VPL, which is our equivalent of League One. So Melbourne Victory under 21s are playing Preston Lions. at the moment. Preston, we know, a massive club down there, and in the VP we've got Kingston City and Northcote City, and at 8:30 Bulleen kick off against Moreland City. So I don't know if you remember Bulleen, Chubbs, another massive club down there in Melbourne.
100%.
Who are languishing in the VPL at the moment, so the second tier down in Victoria.
No, the Victorian NPL is a great league, and like I said, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to bring in with the B League, that competition. We're going to see the Melbourne sides taking on the New South Wales sides at the moment, which is going to be great to see. And like you said, the VPL system over there, and some of the fan bases. I mean, Preston over there have got the biggest fan base. They get nearly 5,000 a game, nearly every game. So it's incredible scenes down there in Melbourne as well.
Yeah, no, it's massive, mate. Massive. Got a lot of friends down there growing up in Melbourne, and always a tough competition. And look, in a way, there's something to look forward to with this national second tier, and we don't know exactly how it's going to play out and how it's going to turn out long term. But yeah, hopefully there's some success there where we can see these teams challenge each other, both interstate and also on a national level. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We're just waiting now. Pete will be on very shortly while we wait for Peter to get on. What are you thinking? What are you thinking about the NPL so far? Still very early, only 10 games in, but you're shaping up again. The common teams are still thereabouts. You still think Spirit's going to still be the one that could surprise the clubs like your Arpiers, your Rockdales, and your Marconis?
Look, the good thing is with seeing someone like Spirit up there, it's something a bit of a different element. But I think where these NPL teams, it's going to be a bit of a challenge is when the Australian Cup gets into that later stage, Shoves, where they're sort of in the competition and vying for a spot against an A-League team. We know it can be quite beneficial for them financially if they get that far into the draw and get an A-League club. So that's where you see a lot of these NPL clubs and how they'll I suppose go in the local comp as well.
Firstly, Andy, let's say good evening to championship winning coach of the NPL last season and currently league leader of the NPL competition this year, and a good friend of mine and a good friend of the show as always supporting us whenever we ask him, always gives his time. Peter Tsakenas, good evening.
Hey, Trevor, how are you?
Good, mate. How's yourself?
I'm well, thanks.
Well, let's start off. Before we start off to that big game you had with Spirit, huge 3 points, let's look back at last season. Incredible run. I tipped you, a lot of people. Rockdale won the minor premiership. I was telling Andy I thought Marconi were the dark horse. I was involved back last year with Hills United. I seen how it was going. You, Costanzo, the boys, I thought you had them firing. Yourself, Peter Papiathas. Tell us a little bit how you felt, what an achievement it was to win it for the club that you were there, been coaching for a while, finally cracked it and won that championship.
Look, always nice to obviously win a championship. It's something we all strive for, and being at a club like Marconi who do have high expectations, and I think expectations from the fans and from anyone looking from outside in. So, look, it was a fantastic season. We started off a little bit sketchy. We had obviously, like everyone, we had some injuries to key players, and but once we got everyone back and we started to get on a roll, you can just feel that something special was about to happen. And we're chasing Rockdale, but they had a very good season, and obviously won the minor premiership. But we gave it a good chase, but we're a little bit behind. We let ourselves down in earlier rounds and a little bit behind them, and they deservedly won the minor premiership. But because we were on such a roll, and had the wood on Rockdale, we knew we had enough to go all the way and win it. And you just got the sense of that very early.
You lost a key player like Andy said in Tomarowski, and you're always happy to see them moving on to the A-League. That's what you're there. You're happy for your boys going on to the A-League, and you've produced a lot of players to the A-League through your time at Marconi. How hard is it in the off season after winning a championship and ticking the bringing new players in and just ticking everyone over and getting them mentally ready again and to go again? Because it's I know that competition, 30 games, it's a long season. You won the championship, but it's hard to get them ticking over again. And after 10 games leading the competition, it's a wonderful achievement.
Yeah, look, it's not easy, especially when you lose key players. But this is an opportunity for us to find not only the right player but the right person that fits in. And we refresh the team. Whether you win or you lose, you always got to evolve and freshen it up. And I think we did that quite well. We've got the right people, right players. Obviously, we didn't win the double, right? So that's our motivation. Our motivation is, we want to win the double. We won the championship, great, but we're missing something. Also a cup run. We also didn't get into the 32 last year, which was disappointing. So, and the fact that the players that are here from last year, they also got a taste of winning and what that's about and what it feels like, and get a taste of it. So they want more. They want more success, and it's not hard to motivate these guys. They're all here for the right reasons. They're all here to further their careers. Some of them, and some others, they're chasing more silverware. And when you put that recipe together, and these boys, they work hard at training. They know what it takes to win things, and they're focused on trying to win everything that's in front of them, and that's our motivation for this year.
Your captain, Yesic, he's like wine. He gets better the older he gets. He was a big part in what you did last year, and again, he drives the team behind them. Players like Costanza. Is Yesic still surprising you? Like, doesn't surprise you, but it's incredible the performances he's still putting in.
Yeah, look, he's fantastic. He's a true pro. He looks after his body. He's a real leader. He's been here longer than I have at the club. I look to him as, obviously as a captain, he's the leader of the change room. He runs the change room. I give him my full support. I trust him. And when he's on the park, his experience is very valuable to us. With some of the young boys running around him, and he controls it. He keeps them calm. He holds them accountable, and it makes my job so much easier when he's on the park. There's no doubt about it. I can't speak highly enough of him as not only as a player but as a person and a real leader. And he's been fantastic for Marconi.
Andy.
Yeah, Peter, I was actually I'm quite local to the club, very local in fact, and I was up there on Friday night. As you may be aware, and most people may be aware, the club is doing a lot of things off the field as well, with a bit of renovations going on in there. Some may say long overdue, but how important is to have? I mean, the facilities are second to none. I was actually up there. I've got a vested interest in a mate of mine who's the assistant coach to Michael Beecham in the women's first grade team. So, but the facilities there, and I suppose the club that backs their football as much as Marconi, we know in the history that they've got there, how important that is for someone like you in the position that you're in to have a club like that back in your football and your players.
Oh, look, I mean, it's very important. I've coached at obviously a few clubs now, or three in particular, and all three of them had different sort of strengths and weaknesses. But as a coach, who wouldn't want to be at a club that has facilities, has football history? There's a lot of history here. The jersey is very heavy for the players who want to wear it. The club itself is fully supportive of football. They want to win, and the expectation is to win. Whether they have there's a perception here that they throw a lot of money because they're well equipped and well resourced. That's not always the case. We try to stay within the limits. I can tell you a lot of my players currently could easily get more for their services at other clubs, but they've decided to stay here at the club. They're well paid, there's no doubt about that, but they could get more elsewhere, but they stay. And even me as a coach, we stay because what we have, we have the facilities, we have the resources, and we're not talking about just dollars and cents. We're talking about, the fields, the facilities, the grass pitch, the way the club looks after the players, post-match and all that sort of stuff. So as a coach, there's no better, or a player, there's no better place at this level to be than a club like Marconi. There's no doubt.
You mentioned also the Australia Cup, which was obviously a disappointing campaign for you guys last year. I'm sure you're looking at going better, and we did mention it to previous interviewees we've had on the show about how important that cup run is. And I was there a few seasons ago back then was the FFA Cup. A massive crowd turns out there at Marconi. It's that small, great boutique stadium with fantastic facilities. But how much are you looking forward to going a bit better in the cup competition, as you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I mean, last year we bowed out on the last hurdle, and we happened to draw Arpio away, and we lost in extra time. So I mean, it wasn't an easy sort of draw that we had, but we got through, and obviously felt the last hurdle to Arpio away from home, which was disappointing, regardless of the run. Yeah, we experienced the first few years that I coached, we got into the 32, and then we got into the 16. We had won the Waratah Cup that year, and we played Melbourne City, who ended up winning the competition that year. We played them at home, which was a fantastic occasion, not only for the players, for the local community, for us coaches, the club, to showcase what we have here. And we came close. I think we only lost 2-1 at the time, and if probably another 5 or 10 minutes, probably would have got something out of that game. So it was a fantastic day, a fantastic moment. The club, they love that, and so do us as coaches and players. And and let me tell you, even against Bankstown City, we didn't take it lightly. We're not going with our under-20s in each game. We're taking every game seriously, because we're taking this competition very seriously. So that just goes to show how important it is.
Checker, with the B-League competition coming in at the end of the season as well, have you been how hard is it now to start preparing for that when you're in the middle of this season as well, and it's quite a long season still to come?
Look, we haven't really got into that at this point, because we're still waiting for some information. But I mean, there's a sense of excitement about it. Once we know what it all entails and what it all means, we're looking forward to it. The players are looking forward to it. They all know it's happening. We're obviously one of the fortunate clubs that are the 8 that are sort of automatic qualification for it. So once it gets a bit closer, we'll start really concentrating on that. We just focus right now on what's in front of us, and that's our cup games that are coming up, and obviously the competition. So that's our real focus. As a coach, obviously, I keep sort of a finger on the pulse. So as soon as the information comes in, I can start, focusing and planning. There's a lot to go to plan behind the scenes in regards to, when it starts, when it finishes, how many games, the players' loads. Do we, in the window, is there an opportunity to dabble into the transfer market? All that sort of stuff will come into play. But right now, that's not our focus. But obviously, it's stuff that in the background, that me and my coaching staff and my sports science and all these guys, because it's a long season. These are part-time footballers, so they're the things we've got to consider. We've got to consider how their bodies are going to be, and how many weeks we give them off, or do we give them weeks off? How far are we going to the cup? How far are we going? Do we get to the grand final and 2 weeks later the competition starts? So all these stuff will have a plan in place depending on when we finish. Make sure we have a plan for every scenario, so then we can go into a competition like that to be competitive.
Just on a personal aspect, Checker, and I know it's probably a bit of a question that that I was put forward, that it's been hard for coaches like yourselves in the NPL, but you've been in the NPL a long time, and like at Marconi, like you said, you won a championship, you're at a big club, doing everything right. It must be a little bit disappointing or disheartening when you don't really get maybe you NPL coaches don't really get a crack into the A-League system. Someone like yourself with your experience, I think, could only benefit the A-League, and you've been around a long time. So how hard or disheartening is it when it seems like you just can't get a crack at it?
Oh, look, I just focus on what I'm doing. I don't look too far ahead. I'm the believer of, if I'm doing the right things and the right people at the right time, see what I'm doing, and make a decision of, say, giving me a call and say, hey, would you be interested? Then, I'd definitely, make myself available for the opportunity. There's no doubt about it. But, I'm not singing and dancing about it. I just focus on what I'm doing, make sure that, I do everything right at this level, and what's in front of me. And, mate, hopefully you get a gig that picks coaches, mate. So, and you give me a gig. So, and that's how football works,
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it just takes someone to give you an opportunity. So, if the opportunity comes, I'd definitely welcome it with open hands. But, if I don't, I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and making sure that I'm successful where I am at that time, and making sure I give 100% to Club Marconi, who give me the trust and been loyal to me all these years, and hopefully I can repay them with a few more trophies.
Pete, thank you for. Just quickly before, I just wanted to say how happy are you as well. Your son's returned to the game, back playing, and it was excellent watching him play with you guys and making his debut with Marconi again. That was great to see as well. You must be a proud moment for you as a dad, seeing him back on the field.
Yeah, definitely. Very proud of him. He's gone through some hard times, as you're aware, and he's got through it, and he's come back, and he's really fit. He's looking forward to it. He's not taking it for granted, and he still has he still wants to play at a high level. So he's working hard. He got injured against Bankstown City, so he'll be out. Well, he got sent off, but he's going to serve his suspension. But he's also injured, so he's nursing an injury, and so he's put in some hard yards, and he's reaping the benefits, and he's doing really well. But he's got to keep working, and it's going to be harder for him to stay in the team than some others, because I'm not as easy on him as I am with others, unfortunately for him.
Congratulations, Pete. Thank you for making your time again. You and Peter Papithas always. I call you as Batman and Robin. A lot of people know you as Batman and Robin, and you've been successful wherever you have been. You've got silverware, you've got trophies, and that's what, when you're in this coaching, people talk about it. At the end of the day, it's about winning trophies, and you've managed to do that at every club you've been to. So that's outstanding, and may it continue. And you put Club Marconi, that run last year with great scenes at Parramatta Stadium and back at the club. It was like the old days when I used to play Marconi. The what was happening, the scenes back at the club and all that, and with the B League coming and that, hopefully there's big things more for Club Marconi in the future.
Thanks, Shubba, mate. Anytime, mate, and I appreciate your support, and good luck with this podcast, because it's good that you're promoting the game, and it's well received. Thank you, mate.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys. Thanks, buddy.
Andy, well, there we go. Legend Peter Tsakenis, we know, ex-Socceroo. Him and Peter Papithas have been together a long time, and they've won trophies wherever they've been, and they've done really well at Marconi. And I suppose it gets a little bit disheartened when these coaches, for whatever reasons, just don't get a look in at the A-League at all.
Yeah, Chubbs, it is very difficult when you're talking sort of limited numbers at that top level. What is it? There's only a handful of teams in around New South Wales. Only a certain number of teams in the competition as well. But it's always going to be difficult. But as long as they're doing what they do as Peter said, at their club, and how successful they've been, that all you can do is just bide your time. Maybe a door will open eventually when these clubs. Unfortunately, I just think these clubs don't have as much.
I think clubs are more, to maybe take the A-League coaches that have had experience already, or they're willing to take the risk on the overseas coach. They're willing to take more of a risk on the overseas coach, where they're not willing to take that risk on an NPL coach.
Yeah, but like players, Chubbs, the coaches at the NPL level need an opportunity as well. So it's something where, unless you're going to take that gamble, you don't know how it's going to turn out. But I'm sure there's a lot of coaches, as we mentioned even to David when we had him on a couple of weeks back, at that NPL level that can do as well a job, or if not better than some of the coaches, not currently, but some considerations that there are out there for A-League clubs.
All right, we're going to turn our attention back to, again, the fairy tale story of the week. It brought down all the media. Social media was going off its nuts. Everyone was talking about it. Who is Arncliffe Aurora? And we've got that man, the man who caused the stir, the brains behind the organisation, the man that won back-to-back championships, if you don't know, with Arncliffe Aurora. Hassan Reda, good evening. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you, Philip?
Very well, excited. Firstly, before we get into that night and what it means to the club and moving forward, another huge game drawn with Sydney Olympic, can you please tell us a little bit of history for our people out there, a little bit about Arncliffe Aurora? Because I know you have come in and, taken the league by storming the St. George Association. You get big crowds when you play. Also, you've formed a partnership or ownership now with St. George City in the Premier League. What's happening? There's big movements with Arncliffe Aurora.
Yeah, look, Arncliffe is a historic club, and it actually stems back, I think, to the early '60s, back to southern Lebanon, and that's where the club actually started. It's an amazing story, and even how the name Aurora came up. It was a village that wanted to start a football club. They stayed all night discussing what are they going to call this club, and then they stayed all the way to sunrise. So they called it Fajr, which means Arabic, which means Aurora.
Wow.
And that's where it took off. And then, the early 80s, all our parents migrated to Sydney, and they just continued and opened a club, I think, in the early 90s. And it's just taken off since. I mean, the whole community gets behind the club. It's really the only thing that, gets us all, together every weekend, down to Arncliffe Park, and the barbecues and the shishas together. And old and young get together to support the team.
Well, like Stealth Rallis, the football agent Tony mentioned before, your community has brought wonderful players. I mean, back in my time, Abassad, he was probably one of the best Lebanese Australian international, played overseas, still coaching now with Roldemare. Huge success. Michael Reda, Tarak Ulrich, Ahmed Ulrich, who got sold overseas. So, although the community is more basically rugby league and so on, in football terms, there's great talent coming through that you see, and there is a lot of passion for the game, football, soccer as we call it as well. And I think just Arncliffe brings that all together.
I agree. Abbas has been massive for our community. He's someone that we've all looked up to. We've all wanted to emulate. We've all wanted to, watch him grow. And we used to follow him to Bilmore. And then Michael Reda came along also. Michael happens to be my uncle.
Yeah, correct.
So the whole family is based around football. But then there's even, Hussein Joma, who played at Sydney Olympic also, Dino. There's been many players that have come through our area. And this is where you were talking earlier about St. George. We kind of feel like sometimes we don't get the rub of the green, depending on which clubs you're going to. And now that Arncliffe has linked up with a Imperial One club, with St. George City, it's really going to be an amazing feat for our community, and like a pathway for all the kids that love football. I mean, there's two major clubs in the St. George area, Lebanese dominated, and between them there's about 1,500 kids that play football every week.
That's a really exciting thing with the partnership there with St. George City, like you said, because it gives the association and kids a pathway really to go through. And I'm hoping that even grows in the future, because that's something we're all looking at very interestedly, and it looks great. Going back to last week, that famous night taking on Mount Druitt Rangers, I suppose now you could say, how confident were you that you could cause this stir and cause the biggest upset ever of Australian Cup history?
Look, I really don't want to sound arrogant, or nor do I want to sound confident. I was kind of hoping that they don't bring their best players, and I think they did leave a couple of the good, the better players out at home.
Yep.
Saying that,
There's
You
still
know,
there still doesn't matter whoever gets on the
exactly
field.
right.
There's still an NPL Premier League standard club.
Absolutely. I mean, I also coach at Apia, and I know
Wonderful
the standard
sports,
to play to play NPL. I'll give you a funny story. I got to Arncliffe Park about 5:30, and my younger brother who plays in my team was smoking a cigarette, and I just eyed him out, and he looked at me and he quickly flicked the cigarette away. I'm like, bro, you got a game in an hour, mate. What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Like the
And he's like,
difference
I'm
in
sorry, I'm
mentality.
sorry. Exactly right.
The
So
difference in professionalism.
Yeah.
look, the same guy after the game actually had to go in concrete. He actually didn't get to celebrate. Literally had to run home, jump in his truck, and drive
Wow.
down to the city to concrete.
Wow.
And that's what it is. But that the mentality of the team and the club and the community that backs it is what really drives us over the line. I'm not going to say I told you so, but there was a little bit of confidence going into the game, thinking, look, if we can pinch a goal early, which we have the players to do that, and then just hold on for dear life after that.
Who are some of your big guns? I know that you've got some big names of players that have played in Premier League and have been around and about in the Australian football game.
It's one of the biggest names is Billy Shaheen.
Okay.
I think Billy was at the Wanderers for a couple of years, and only due to injury that he got held back. I think he even got he got offered to go to Spain, and I think injury is the only thing that kind of held him back. I have another player by the name of Mohammed Farhat, who, although he's done his teacher. He also played at Olympics, so he's got a bit of a point to prove on Wednesday night. Abasad, obviously mentioned, but he's always been, I turn to him anytime that I want to coach, and I always ask for his advice. Who else do I have? I've got another guy by the name of Ali Farhat, who also played for St. George. I think that was NPL 2 or 1. I can't remember. I got a good Asian kid. He just, he's a delivery driver, and he came on through Instagram. He just wanted to come and play. And I've got a fantastic Hungarian. Look, they're all good players, but then you've got the local boys that just play for the badge. They play for a barbecue at the end of it. They're happy with a free sausage at the end of the game, what I mean?
Andy, you got anything you want to ask before
Mate, well, just mentioning barbecue, I reckon you guys got the best canteen in the district, that's for sure. That'll be
by far.
We're going to come down and try it, Chubbs and myself.
Well, we're definitely going to be out there with the next game with Olympic. We're all looking forward to that.
I mean, how big is this game on Wednesday week? I think it is the 23rd. I mean, you said that it's a massive community club. I noticed when doing a bit of research on the club, you guys have even got women's teams. I've got a daughter that plays in the NPL, and how important that women's factor is. So the club is really. It just seems like it's just run really, really well, and a lot of focus on community and also the women's football. But back on the Australia Cup, that 23rd, I mean, the scenes are going to be
one for the ages.
Look, again, just from promoting it, point of view, I'm expecting about 5,000 people there.
Definitely.
We purposely done it on a Wednesday night so we can get as much people down there as possible, because we know a lot of the boys that do train Tuesdays, Thursdays in other clubs wanted to come down and watch.
Yep.
The community is buzzing, and I don't think Football St. George, to a lesser extent, or Football New South Wales know how much football means to our community. It's such a big factor in our community. Look, especially Arncliffe, like if I lose on the weekend, but I'm bombarded with phone calls and messages for the whole week, and they hit me up with different formations and strategies and who should have played where and what subs I made wrong. The community is. I'm not even kidding. Like I'll be hit with about 100 messages by the next game, all with their own point of view of what I should have done. If I tell you a funny story, my cousin also coaches at Rockdale, in the local competition. He'll even message me and tell me what I did wrong.
That's passion. Can't be passion.
Hassan,
yeah, absolutely.
We can't hide the question, because Arncliffe Aurora as well has had a lot of bad publicity and stuff like that. You know it yourself, and which you're trying to move away from that. But when people talk like that bad about the club, it must be disappointing because, like you said, you guys don't have. It's not about you aren't thugs. You don't want to be known as thugs. You're a community doing really hard work and just bringing the passion back to the home. It's not about being thugs and being stupid and doing. You just want to bring the real passion back to the game.
It's it's not a hidden fact that when you've got so many youth all together. We're talking like hundreds of boys that hang out together here. It's just testosterone. It's just trying to guide them in the right direction. Definitely, we don't want to be known as thugs. I mean, a couple of years ago, Manly came and played in the Australia Cup against us, and I was speaking to the coach. I forgot his name, and I said to him, "Look, the crowd's going to be intimidating, but I guarantee you, like, do not be fearful. After the game, you're just going to be loved like you're part of us." And he actually walked up to me after the game and he said that to me. A big shout out also does go out to our committee. They've come in 3-4 years ago and they've really, really cleaned out the place. We say that the president of the club at the time came in with the iron fist and he always laughs about it now that sometimes you have to come in and take a zero tolerance approach. And unfortunately, because of the publicity that we copped in the past, he had to make some very big decisions, by asking people to move on. And even not in that regard, even giving boys that needed that, tender love and care. And he gave it to them. He gave them positions in the club, a bit of responsibility. And they loved it. And there was a bit of, backlash initially, but then when he, showed the vision to the community as where he wants to take the club, and he has, and really a lot of credit goes to him and the committee and how hard they are working.
Hassan, no, thank you again for your time. Like, I've just got to meet you and you've been outstanding. We've spoke off air and, me and Andy, we're all going to be, and Chubba TV, Football Fever, we're a support of Arncliffe Aurora. We love what you do. We love what you guys bring, the community, the passion. That's what football's all about. It's all about the passion and you guys bring that in spades. And, you're taking on my team, Sydney Olympic. I don't want you to beat them, but I'm still going to be there supporting. It's going to be a huge night, and we can't wait. And like you said, hopefully we get over that 5,000. Maybe we can get closer to 10,000 because that's what that game deserves. It's going to be an enormous night and a good night for football and a night of celebration.
Absolutely. Funny enough, I've got Sydney Olympic on the weekend with Apia with my 15s. So I'm kind of hoping for a double against them, on Saturday and then again on Wednesday night. Look, for us to beat Sydney Olympic, it's going to be a mighty effort. We're just happy being there, if you know what I mean.
100%. Well, if you beat Sydney Olympic, I think the mainstream again, that'd be enormous. It'd be a huge game, but why not? That's what it's all about. You can only dream, and it's 90 minutes. Anything's possible.
Absolutely. Really looking forward to the game, and make sure you come past and you say hello, you know what I mean? Look, 100%. I might be a bit fiery in the dugout, but just see me after the game.
We'll do.
We'll do, Hassan. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks,
say hi to Uncle Michael. I played with him. We worked together at Parramatta Melita back in the day. Say hi to him for me. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good luck, mate.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Andy, like we said, Arncliffe Aurora, that club has had its hits, maybe like the Wanderers with their support base. But at the end of the day, it's, we don't want thugs. We don't want that. But the passions and those things that they can bring in, it's incredible. And that's what our game's all about.
Well, Huss hit the nail on the head, Chubbs. You always get a group of younger boys with testosterone overflowing, if you like, high levels of testosterone. They get amongst friends and end up carrying on. It happens a lot. Unfortunately, they've had their history with it, but it's great to see the committee, I should say, in the last couple of years have cleaned it all out, and that's what it's about, for them to learn from it. Learn from the process. At the end of the day, you can't really do that, and some of the scenes.
And for football lovers, get out there on that Wednesday night. It's going to be a big night. Get out there. and you're going to enjoy, get something nice to eat, and watch a great game and a great night of football festivities. Andy, let's go to the EPL. Can we start your team, my team? I'm getting closer to winning the Premier League. Your team's getting closer to.
Can we give our congratulations to you, or
what? Not yet. Your team's getting closer to that top 4. But what were the results? Can you go through all the results for us in the EPL?
Yeah, mate. I'll bring it up now as you. As we speak.
Because there were some huge results. I mean, there's still a lot to play for, especially now with the top 5 going to the Champions League as well, with the new system as well.
Yeah, so the early game Saturday night, Chubbs, 2-0 for a while there. Crystal Palace were leading Manchester City, and we just thought, hang on, what's going on here? That would have been a great result for my team, Newcastle, but then Manchester City just went bang, crash, wallop. The game finished 5-2. Later on Saturday or early Sunday morning, Aston Villa beat Southampton 3-0. Everton, a surprise win over Nottingham Forest. Another late goal, 94th minute goal for Everton. Brighton Leicester drew 2-2. Arsenal again stumbled after a massive win in the Champions League last week. They drew to Brentford at home 1-0. 1-1 after taking the lead 1-0. Wolves beat poor old Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham outfit 4-2. Your team, Liverpool, left it late again, 2-1. Virgil van Dijk with the winner there overnight. And the other game, which was a bit of a shock result, Chelsea drew 2-2 with Ipswich. Again, Ipswich were leading 2-0 early in that game in the first half. And the big result, Chubbs, as you know, we get a lot of satisfaction by beating Manchester United, but 4-1 Newcastle against Manchester United this morning. Obviously, I'm over the moon. Fantastic result. It's put us in a firm position for that.
It's been good for Newcastle because after winning the League Cup, you wonder how they were going to respond. Sometimes there could be a drop-off, but after with the celebrations, we've seen how many millions were there at the street parade for it. But they've really gone. Newcastle's playing some of the best football at the moment, leaps and bounds, and I think they're definitely going to make the top 5. I think you'll be back in the Champions League next year.
Yeah, well, we've got a game in hand on Chelsea, who are on 6. So just looking at the table, Liverpool 13 points clear. Congratulations. I think it's time to congratulate. Let's make it official ourselves. 76 points. Arsenal 63, 13 points behind. Nottingham Forest now on 57. Newcastle's only 1 point behind Forest with that game in hand. Third spot, 56. And you've got Manchester City 55, who've also played 32. Chelsea played 32, around out the top 6 on 54. You've got Aston Villa who've been in some form too, Chubbs. There, 54 as well in 7th spot.
Well, like you said, the big talk. Well, you can say, like you said, Liverpool. I mean, we could be crowned champions if Arsenal drop points to Ipswich this week and we beat Leicester, but we only need 6 more points. You would think I mean, we haven't been playing well.
Charger, Chubbs. Give me 1 second.
No, that's all right. Liverpool haven't been playing well of late. We've been, we've just been good enough just to win last night. Again, it wasn't our best performance, but it was a critical 3 points, like you said. Van Dijk coming up with a critical header, and whatever happens and whatever people want to say, the league hasn't been this good or the teams have a drop off. Well, after a man like Jurgen Klopp leaves Liverpool and Arne Slot comes in, everyone was expecting Liverpool to be on a downer. The fact that Arne Slot has done this in his first season, at the end of the day, you still have to win your games. Doesn't matter if other teams aren't at the best, you still got to be consistent. He's lost 2 games all season, and it'd be remarkable for him what he'll do in his first season. And like you said, Liverpool will be crowned champions. It's only now a matter of time.
Chubbs, look, no one can say they don't deserve it, but what's actually I thought about this morning, is what's quite surprising is the margin, the gap that they've got to us.
Well, when we won it, we've got the record margin. We won it by 23 points when we won it during that COVID season. I mean, there was talk that we could win it by that big of a margin again. Maybe there's still a few games left to go. Like I said, our form's dipped a little bit. We're not I don't think, playing as well as we were earlier on in the season, but we're going to be crowned champions. Liverpool, it's a huge achievement, and for Arne Slot. And like you said, I think the bottom 3 is pretty much done and dusted. It's really now that big battle for the top 5. And like you said, all the way down to Aston Villa. You got Aston Villa, Chelsea, Man City, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest. What a race it is.
Yeah, it's gonna be a massive run in, Chubbs. And looking at some of the fixtures, I know Newcastle have got a few tough games in the run home. So we still got to play Aston Villa. We also still have to play Chelsea and Arsenal. So yeah, it's going to be quite tricky. Aston Villa are a team coming home with a wet sail. That was a big win for them on the weekend, and they played Champions League also last week. You pretty much thinking now Arsenal, just on their result in the Champions League, they've got one foot in the door.
Well, Arsenal rested a lot of players too, so and we've got to speak, like, their result over Real Madrid was incredible with all the injuries they've had and all the talk. That performance, I mean, Rice, who hasn't scored a goal, a free kick ever, scoring two of the best free kicks you'll ever see. I mean, couldn't do it at a better time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is half time, but they're going to burn about. I can't. A lot of people talking, Real Madrid might score early, they might come back. I think Arsenal will do the job, and I think that's where their concentration is, and that's where I think it's affected them in the last couple of games in the EPL.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've obviously turned their attention now to the Champions League. And look, at the end of the day, that's going to be their focus. They're definitely out of reach for the title. I think that happened a while ago now. But the other interesting results in the quarterfinal was Inter Milan got a 2-1 away in the Bayern Munich in their first leg, and also Barcelona absolutely destroyed Dortmund, and obviously Barcelona are the team to beat.
Yeah, a lot of people were talking about Barcelona Real Madrid final before that Arsenal game because Barcelona's on the other side, but I think a dark horse on this side of the draw is PSG.
I agree, Chubbs. You guys bowed out to PSG. They're fantastic team all round, and players just in positions they just keep on doing the job. I mean, they were very impressive themselves against Aston Villa after going down early, and you'd think they'd have enough to tie up the second leg and progress to the semi-finals. I don't know if you saw actually this morning that red card though to Kylian Mbappe. My goodness, that was that was very bad there this morning in Real Madrid. They did end up winning the game 1-0, but just absolutely.
Andy, have you got any concerns for Nottingham Forest? I mean, they've been in the top four pretty much all season, so they've done a tremendous job. We know the last 6 games, now the last 7-8 games are probably the hardest in anyone's season when you've got to close out where you want to finish. And with Newcastle's form, Man City seems to be back in the race. I mean, Chelsea's a little bit undone, but like you said, Aston Villa fine. Is there a chance at the end Forest don't secure a Champions League spot?
There is, Chubbs, because they're still in the FA Cup. They're in the semi-finals against the FA Cup against Manchester City. Look, they've got a fairly easy run home. They've only really got Chelsea that they have to play. The other games they've got coming up, they've got Tottenham this weekend, and then they've got Brentford, Crystal Palace, Leicester, and West Ham. Quite winnable games. But I think their focus is going to be at the end of this month. They've got Manchester City in Wembley, as we know. These semi-finals of the FA Cup are going to be in Wembley, so that's going to be big for them, I think, and a lot of their focus. So that'll.
I've seen some of the social media sites, they're tipping Newcastle to finish in the top 3 now.
Yeah, well, considering only 1 point behind Forest with that game in hand, Chubb, so I think they're in a great position. The other big thing with the weekend is Eddie Howe wasn't on the sidelines. He was actually quite ill in hospital. So hopefully for us and for Newcastle fans and football fans, he makes a full recovery, which I think he will. But it's a huge result this morning, which is good. Put them in such a good position,
especially with trying to secure Isak for next season as well. A lot of talk him moving, but I think even Liverpool and Arsenal are starting to think that it's going to be too hard of a move. And if you hear a lot of the talk is that he will remain at Newcastle, which will be big news. And of course, the big story over the weekend was finally one of the players that Liverpool had uncontracted, and massive news that Mohamed Salah re-signed for the club. A lot of people were thinking, well, he's going to Saudi Arabia and all that. But again, I think with Mohamed Salah, it's not about money, Andy, because he was offered much more money about Saudi Arabia. I think it's all about breaking these records. He's closing in to be Alan Shearer's record. He's closing in on a few big players, and I think he knows that he's still got records to play, and the best place for him to do it is still be at Liverpool. And I think Virgil van Dijk's done as well, but they're not announcing it. They let Mohamed Salah have his time first. So Virgil van Dijk's resigning. And if you believe some of the stories that are coming out of the media today, there's a lot of talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold U-turn staying at Liverpool. So Andy, just keep your eye on that one.
Yeah, well, you did mention that when we had Nick on about the Alexander Arnold story, but it's massive for Salah and obviously Van Dijk staying there, and a lot of faith shown in Arne Slot for what he's done just in his first season. So two big signings. Before we go, Chubbs, I want to ask you about Ange Postecoglou and what do you think his future is there at Tottenham?
Look, obviously, it's been a huge disappointment for him. He had a lot of injuries, but you can't.
Are they going to wait to see what happens with Europa League?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about Europa League. I think it was a little bit of a disappointing result as well, 1-1 in that Europa League tie. Now they've got to go away to the Germans outfit, but again, I think Andy, if I'm being serious, if he doesn't get a good result in that Europa League, I think Tottenham will be changing manager next season. It's pretty done and dusted, unless he can do a miracle and win that Europa League.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Chubbs. I had a conversation with a mate this morning about it, and I think a lot is going to hinge on that Europa League result. But yeah, they should have done more with that first league game being at home. So now they've got to travel to Frankfurt and hopefully, look, I wouldn't put it past it, but that's a disappointing result on the weekend. I don't know if you saw the goal, the quality of the goals.
I've seen it. There was, you can just see, I don't know, they just look way off it at the moment. Tottenham, where they were, we always had them as one of the top 5 clubs, always battling for European spots. And, for a club like Tottenham to be where they are at the moment, it's just unacceptable.
Well, disappointing, and more disappointing for Ange if he doesn't keep his job. Being obviously a fellow Australian, we always want to see him do well. So
well, they're still in the Europa League, so let's hope he can still do some magic there. Andy, another great show. Like I said, for anyone, just subscribe and press the like button if you like our show. And we always bring the latest scoop stories. We bring the latest interviews, and that's what we're doing. It's been great the last few weeks. We're going to have a bit of a break next week, being a public holiday here, and a lot of the NPL teams are playing, so we all have our commitments on Easter Monday football. So we'll be back the week after with some huge interviews and some huge stories like we'll do. We'll work hard in the behind the scenes to break all the stories and get all our info and get all the interviews and get them all together. Andy, thanks again for your help. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chubbs. And happy Easter to everyone celebrating.
Yeah, happy Easter to everyone. Enjoy, have a happy Easter, and still plenty of football to come. So, like I said, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Out for now.
Thanks, Chubbs.
Thank you.